On the three primary distortions. These are the first three laws of nature that came from the undistorted. There's so many names for it or him. And I think the most basic way to explain this is that in the Taoist tradition, the Taoist philosophy and religion, and also in India, they view it this way too. And I think maybe in China as well, maybe all of the East, in fact, they view everything, certainly the Taoists, they view everything as a duality of, and that's, we're talking about polarity tonight. That's the main topic, is the path of polarity. Choose your polarity and choose the path of positive or negative. Tonight's so fun. Oh my gosh, I'm going to really have to stay on target. But the way they say it is there's an absolute reality or a supreme reality, and then the relative reality. So the absolute and the relative. And so they view the absolute, the supreme, now that is just pure God, or intelligent infinity would be a more scientific, less stigmatized word than God. Some people say the universe, but that technically wouldn't be it, because that's the relative. The universe is the creation. So God creation, or before the Big Bang and then the Big Bang. So whatever was before the Big Bang and then after the Big Bang. So the unmanifest and then the manifest. But everything in creation, from the birth of the universe to the present, as I'm saying these words right now, as it's May 6th, it's about 5:14 and 5 seconds Pacific Daylight Time here, a few miles north, maybe 10 miles, or no, maybe 15 miles north of the Mexican border. But until the present day, among all the possible distortions, everything, so anxiety disorder or a momentary judgment against someone, and literally everything are distortions that come from the three primal distortions. And before then were the absolute. Papaya is resonating with this. Undistorted, undifferentiated, intelligent infinity. Unity, I've heard it called too. Unity slash infinity, where scientifically you could call it, within that unity, there's a potential and there's a kinetic. And so the potential would be the intelligent infinity. That's the potential. And then the intelligent energy is the kinetic. And so unity has that potential and then taps itself. So so that's craziness, right? So what you're seeing, according to this, all of universe is made from free will, love, and white light. Crazy stuff. Among the possible distortions, there are three primary distortions from which every subsequent distortion arises. Jolene said, "This is so interesting. It reminds me of philosophy class." Yeah, spiritual philosophy and cosmogenesis combined. It's like sci-fi meets Marcus Aurelius or Plato or Aristotle. And then truth is stranger than fiction. These foundational distortions result from either God creating light or an accidental Big Bang, depending on who you talk to. There's the spirit science. Zero creates the one, creates two, creates three. So the potential of intelligent infinity, aka God, forms the kinetic of intelligent energy creation in the following sequence: 0, 1, 2, 3. Other words for intelligent infinity: God. Papaya is really resonating with this stuff. Is this blowing your mind and you're not even human? To the degree that you are unblocked in your energies and balanced in mind, body, spirit, and to the degree that you're able to resonate with truth and gnosis and direct knowing, perhaps tonight, a lot of the stuff, instead of being like learning it, it might be like you're remembering it. God, source, creator, infinite creator, the one infinite creator, Lord, Jesus, 0 point, mysterium, the plenum, Krishna, Allah, like I said, the universe, true source, cosmic mind, Godhead. And from that intelligent infinity is the potential. And then it taps that unity, taps that potential with the kinetic. If you flip the side of the coin, there's a potential and a kinetic. So it taps that infinity with the kinetic intelligent energy with free will. So it uses free will. So God becomes aware. Whoa, realizes it's this infinite, intelligent, infinite, omnipresent, total, like infinite love, wisdom, intelligence, all that stuff. But it's infinite. And so then it discerns, so it becomes aware, and then it discerns the concept of finity. What would finity be like? And then, all right, so it kind of works this thing out, and then boom, big bang, let there be light. So it uses free will to tap the intelligent infinity to create the logos, the word, which is the second distortion or the second movement of creation. Second distortion is love, love, logos, the creative principle. If you're doing a software program, like say on your iPhone or your Android, how you can, there's different programs in it, and there's like a master program that runs it. So love, the law of love or the creative principle, that's what the whole universe is, kind of the fundamental, like the building blocks, the essence. Or if you're making a painting, that would be the paints, is the love and light. And it's also has the free will. So that's all the building blocks. The primary ones, then from these three primary movements, distortions, laws, then there's the seven primary ways, which we'll talk about next, I think. The word. So there was, God said, let there be light. There was the word. So these are the first, this is the scientific way of saying it. There was the law of free will, confusion, the law of love, and then the law of light. Let there be light. Many hierarchies of distortions come from these distortions. That means everything that you see comes from these three. Jolene said, I am so glad I signed up for this class. That description was fire. Zeus. Papaya, okay, I know that you're loving this, but Papaya and Jolene are loving tonight. But Jolene's being more respectful to class and she's not chirping loudly. Thank you, Jolene, for not chirping like Papaya. Here's what Carl Sagan says. By looking far out into space, we are also looking far back into time, back toward the horizon of the universe, back toward the epoch of the Big Bang. If you haven't seen yet, although you likely have, I think it's called the JSOWT or the JSOT. It's NASA's newest,
The
it's
J
their
West
newest
replaced the
satellite.
Hubble.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. So they sent it out into space, and the types of images this thing brought back. It's like looking back into time, just like this Carl Sagan quote says. It's like looking back into time from when the Big Bang happened. That's crazy that we now have technology. So if you haven't seen that, those pictures, go on the NASA YouTube channel. Deepak Chopra says this about it. If the fate of the universe was decided in a single moment at the instant of the Big Bang, that was the most creative moment of all. And Bob Cochran says, this is a Christian podcaster, I think. When I think about the universe, I love how that word is divided into universe, one verse. It speaks to the idea of all creation as one glorious synchronized whole. I like to think of the universe as the song of God, with God conducting all of creation to sound forth a beautiful melody, unfolding the expression of divine soul, purposeful goodness. All right, now that we've covered creation or Big Bangadom, here's the seven primary principles, also known as the Hermetic principles or laws of nature, principles of the universe. One is mentalism. Says that the all is mind, the universe is mental. I should have included the all when I was talking about God, intelligent infinity. That's another term for that, the all. So this principle says that intelligent infinity or God, Jesus, the all is mind. The universe is mental. The statement states that everything in the universe, from the tangible to the intangible, matter, energy, all of it, is spirit. And what is spirit? Living mind, living mind. Number two is correspondence. As above, so below, and as below, so above. This law or principle states that there's always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life. And so there's a really cool book. It's called The Kabbalion. I think it was written in 19, maybe like 1906 or 1920, somewhere in the beginning of that century. And in that chapter on correspondence, there's a whole chapter on it. He goes over the different planes of correspondence, planes, Planes. So like the physical planes and the mental planes and the spiritual planes and the elemental planes and the other planes. It's really technical and interesting. But anyway, so that means that all of these other six principles, they're all going to manifest on all those different planes that I was mentioning. The final principle, the seventh principle, is gender. So here in the 3D physical space-time plane that we're in, incarnate right now, the principle of gender manifests physically as sex. But on higher planes, different planes, lower planes, different planes, it can manifest as something besides that, something different. Like on a mental plane, it's not going to manifest like that. And then three is vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Everything, this table, this microphone, this computer, this glass, no matter how solid something looks, it's all vibrating in motion and mostly empty space, 99.99% empty space, despite looking and feeling completely physical, completely physical. Everything's in motion and vibrating despite looking physical. Matter, this table, me, papaya, is simply a much lower vibration, the little particles vibrating around, than pure spirit, the all. Four is polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are actually the same. Opposites are actually identical in nature, although different in degrees. Like, where does heat end and cold begin? I dated this one girl before, and that's back when I used to run really hot. So I had an aversion to hot weather, or even, really warm weather. I even had an aversion to. Meanwhile, she was the opposite polarity. She would get cold so easily, way too easily. And so she had a equal aversion to cold. And so that's just one site of relative right there. I'd be like, what are you talking about? It's cold. I'm too warm. This is so, yeah, where does heat end and cold begin? All these things are actually identical, just different in degrees. That's a trip to think about if that's your first time thinking about it. Principle five is rhythm. I love this one. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. Low tide, high tide. Tide goes in, tide goes out. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. What goes up must come down. The pendulum swing is going to swing the other damn way. What goes up must come down. Must come down. Oh, yeah. Cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. So anybody that thinks anything happens by chance just isn't aware that nothing ever happens by chance. Everything happens exactly according to cause and effect. Every cause creates a certain effect, and there's an effect to every cause and a cause to every effect. So with these principles, the more that if you do a deep dive into these, which I highly recommend, then there's ways that you can learn to do things like mental transmutation, where you're using mental alchemy to shift your emotions and your mental states using proven, pretty simple, actually, techniques. You can learn how to become more of a causer, more of a positive causer, and less of a kind of reactive effect. So, like life, I remember back in the day, I felt like a pinball, and I was a pinball, and some dumbass was the one playing, and I was just getting beat up all the time. And it was because I was unconscious, and it was because my brain and mental health and physical complex were debilitated. I wasn't spiritually awake whatsoever. So there was a lot of things holding me down. I was more like an effective life. Now, you look at the most successful people, the most fulfilled, not just successful, I don't mean like making money, most successful, like living a kick ass, life of fulfillment. It's not about the money part, but usually they're making good money too, and they got their life going great. Usually it's because they've figured out how to proactively be in the causer mode most of the time, where they're intentionally creating both little and big effects by them having agency over this principle as them as a causer. So the more that you understand these seven primary principles, the more that you can work with them, the more that you can notice them in everything and everyone. And then the more that you can embody it, then it becomes embodied behavior and thinking through repetition and conditioning. And this really gives you not necessarily cheat codes to the video game. If you view life as like a video game that maybe your higher self or your soul is playing from some other place and your physical body is here, then knowing these seven principles very, very well makes the game a lot easier. I'll say that. Becoming a spiritual player in the game of life. We're going to talk about the difference between player with a lowercase p and an uppercase p, and the game of life or the game board, capitalized or lowercase, and then choosing the positive path. Player versus player. All right, a lowercase player on the lowercase g game board. That denotes a person who doesn't polarize their consciousness to one way or the other, left or right, positive or negative, service to all, service to self, or service to others and all, self-service. A bunch of different ways to talk about it, the negative path, the positive path. Most of the religions, and I haven't studied a lot of religions, but I've studied maybe a handful, and they seem to all teach the positive path, just in different ways, with very similar backstories too, even in some of the stories. So they don't polarize positively or negatively. What does that mean? Well, they don't commit to things like truth and compassion, beauty, honesty, non-harming of others. Don't commit to the opposite polarity. Things like illusion, separation, cruelty, trickery, even ugliness, harming others, evil. One guy described it in a cool way because a lot of people can't understand the negative polarity. They don't understand the negative path. So they understand that it's there, but they don't understand how a person could want to be like that. I understand why someone could want to be like that for sure. I don't want to be like that, and I'm not like that. But the negative path can be very tempting. This path can be so tempting. In fact, I was on the negative path for a few years when I was on alcohol addiction at the beginning, particularly when I was selling drugs. When I was selling drugs, my role model at that time in my early 20s was kind of a role model, but I wanted an alternate ending. If you've ever seen the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, great movie, by the way, based on a true story, one of Johnny Depp's best movies. He plays this infamous or famous, depending on how you look at it, drug dealer that started off selling little dime bags of Mexican marijuana in beach places in Southern California. And then he went from that to, pretty quickly owning a bunch of mansions and airplanes and, having all these flights from, what's his name? The guy in Costa Rica or somewhere else, maybe Fidel Costa, those types of things. So he got really big. So the end of that, I guess I won't, if you haven't seen it and you're going to watch it, I won't spoil what goes on, but he was kind of like my idol. I watched that movie, believe it or not. I watched the movie Blow more than a dozen times. And I really wanted that lifestyle, total service to self, where I wasn't committed to serving others, helping others, kindness. No, it was just all about getting as much material wealth and power and cool things and houses and women and drugs and money, that kind of thing as I wanted. So yeah, it can be very tempting, this negative polarity. And so a lowercase player is someone who hasn't committed either consciously or unconsciously to either of those. And I was going to explain it, but I never got around to it. These two polarities are best described as a picnic. The positive polarity, that is a traditional picnic. You're at the beach. Okay, this would be I live about 20-minute drive from a place called La Jolla Shores. Gorgeous beach, really good tourist destination. It's by this beautiful golf courses just north of it. Just north of this beach is Scripps Pier and Scripps Beach and Scripps Research Institute. It's like a oceanography place, just a gorgeous area. La Jolla is a rich, really rich city. A lot of generational wealth there, and they keep it up really nice. So, anyways, this type of a picnic would be the positive path. This is their passion. Would be a picnic on La Jolla Shores park area, grass area, right next to the ocean and the boardwalk, with lots of great foods and drinks and laughter and music and love and connection and helping others, helping the elderly there and that kind of a picnic. The negative polarity, that would be a picnic where it's at nighttime. It's pitch black dark. It is Friday the 13th. It's a full moon. So it's not pitch black dark. It's a full moon, Friday the 13th, nighttime, midnight, or no, it's 3 a.m. Instead of all those daytime beach activities, this picnic has satanic blood drinking and ritualistic chanting and killing of innocents. And so it would be more like a picnic like that. These are metaphorical picnics, by the way. All right. And now an uppercase P player on the game board with a capital G, that represents a person polarized by choosing and living a path. The positive path is about honoring the free will of others. The negative path's about infringing on the free will of others, taking their free will and enslaving them, or at least controlling them. But their goal is to enslave and be in control of everything and everyone. People on the negative path don't care about free will, and their standard operating procedure, SOP, is self-service and using others as pawns to get what they want. So on the surface, they may seem like a sheep, but in a future slide, we'll get to be careful. Watch out for wolves in sheep clothing. Here's something from, this isn't the same exact slide. It's the same exact picture on the left right here of something called the map of consciousness. That week 6 of mindset mastery contains this as one of the main things, transcending the levels of consciousness by using this map right here. So this is a map of the positive path. The positive path is one where once you commit to it, or if you're already committed to it, what you do is you start from obviously wherever you're at, kind of average basis on this map, and then you aim as high as you want or as high as you can go, or you aim for a certain specific spot even. So this is a map of consciousness that is vibrational and is also logarithmic, developed, or rather discovered/developed by David Hawkins, MD, PhD. He died a few years ago. Decades of work in writing books in spirituality and consciousness. One of my favorite dudes. So the lowest third of this hierarchy contains emotions and states of being, like shame, fear, anger, pride, and desire. The middle level, the middle tier of the hierarchy, and there's 3 tiers, starts at courage and ends in reason. Your goal for SQ mastery is a constant and never-ending improvement, or Kanai, of your SQ, which is your IQ combined with your EQ multiplied by the power of your presence. Presence is full mindfulness in the moment. And then the top tier of the consciousness hierarchy is a spiritual paradigm. It's where your identity becomes spiritualized, or where you wake up to the truth that your identity actually is spiritual. But don't tell your ego that. All right, polarity is an essential feature of contrast within the universe. More technical definition is polarity is the condition or circumstance of having 2 opposing yet complementary properties that attenuate one another so that 1, each may be experienced, and so that 2, Work may be done. WORK. That's polarity. Some fundamental polarities would be positive, negative, male, female, open, closed, being, doing, work, rest, resist, surrender, hot, cold, up, down. Polarity is present in everything. There's nothing that is non-polarized, including consciousness. The two poles of consciousness, I already went into it, but they can be positive and negative, like a magnet, or you could describe it in more descriptive terms, service to all or service to others, and service to self, or positive and negative paths. Another method of viewing the polarities involves the dichotomy of radiation and absorption. Imagine Jesus as positively radiating compassion and unconditional love versus imagine some really, really evil, dark, negative person absorbing all of Jesus's energy or absorbing all of somebody else's energy. So the dichotomy or the polarity of radiating versus absorbing, or a magnet repelling, magnetizing. Just as each individual contains a unique masculine feminine energy balance, so does each person hold a ratio of service to self, service to others, or service to others, service to self. Furthermore, the more you choose how to serve, the more your polarity is activated. Unpolarized consciousness, these types of people, they haven't made a clear choice, either consciously or unconsciously, of which path to stick with in life. The unpolarized middle ground between the two poles of consciousness has been called a sinkhole of indifference. This is what Gary Bean says about this sinkhole. The sinkhole of indifference is part of the fabric of our everyday lives in our global society. It is woven into our rampant consumerism, our economy and its many imbalances, our neglect for and exploitation of the planet, our many shallow and non-catalyst using relationships, our insatiable search for distraction, escape, and entertainment, our confusions about ethics and values, our ways of organizing government and choosing leadership, our lack of unifying narratives, and our relationship with the whole. Here's the no-path lifestyle, unpolarized consciousness. The primary desires and motivations are distraction, anonymity or conformity, escapism, comfort, and instant gratification. Unpolarized typically leads to an unconscious lifestyle, leading to a feeling of deep, super deep apathy, multidimensional apathy, which manifests in a myriad of ways, including our global division, more nowadays than ever so, since I've been alive at least, and numbness, indifference to the dire needs of billions. When making a decision, here's the analysis of these three different sets or groups of consciousness in humanity. All right, if a person is service to others or service to all, they consider which path offers the most opportunity for this type of service to all. So it's like everyone wins. Service to self, they consider which path offers the most opportunity for serving their own self, period. They don't want a win-win game. They like zero-sum games where there's winner and loser. And then unpolarized consciousness, the considerations are random and most likely in the direction of comfort. The positive path is like this. In life, there's a choice regarding how an individual will do three things. So there's three primary differences between these two types of consciousness. Positive consciousness, it will love, service, and free will are the three areas. So when it comes to the positive path, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha, there's so many different people, Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Joyce Meyer. These are all great people on the positive path, or that lived the positive path, or Joyce is currently on the positive path. Nelson Mandela, some of these really famous, Martin Luther King. So here's what they do. Service to others, consciousness, and free will. They seek to recognize, honor, respect, support your free will and sovereignty universally and unconditionally. And they seek, for love, they seek to radiate love and kindness to all beings. For service, they seek to serve others and their own self. So that's service to all. Contrast much different to service to self-consciousness, or the negative path in that picture on the left. That is Genghis Khan right there, responsible for the death and rape and, pillaging and taking over. The guy led decades of campaigns of slaughters where they just took over the world. And he made so many offspring. Total service to self lifestyle, where this philosophy seeks to form a separation based relationship to free will, concluding that your free will and the free will of others doesn't need to be respected, doesn't need to be honored, doesn't need to be valued or supported. Instead, the service to self negative path seeks to manipulate, exploit, control, and enslave others for the sole, primary, unitary benefit of their own self only. For love, negative path seeks to absorb the energy of others for selfish gain, and they only love the self, period. And then service, they only seek to serve themselves, no one else. The primary difference between these polarities is how they seek to either control or accept things in life. So all those examples I gave of those famous people from history and then even alive today, those are lifestyles very much so of, yes, they're accepting of things. They stand up for what's right and what they can control, but they also realize that they can only control what they think, say, and do. Some of those people I mentioned, or one of those people, might have had super special powers, but most people, humans, we can only control what we think, say, and do. So acceptance, that's all that is. Acceptance is accepting that that's all we can control. And life is going to have so many different things that we can't control, and that's just fine. Versus the negative polarity doesn't think that's fine. They want to mold life and people and society, even, and culture, even, civilization, maybe even. They want to control and mold and manipulate and influence everything to be how they want it to be, how they think it should be, because they're the best, they're the smartest, they're the elite, and everyone else is the dumb peasants that need to be shown what to do and how to do it. Very different, totally different ways of viewing life and viewing people and behaving in the world. Totally different. In Genghis Khan, back in those days, you could just do that kind of stuff. And if you had the better army, then you could get away with it. Nowadays, with all the laws that we have and with the crowded and surveilled earth, the strategies, we still have war, but a lot of the strategies are also more clandestine, more secretive, more black book or black project, so to speak, nowadays. All right, here's the negative path in a nutshell. An individual with service to others' consciousness, again, seeks radical acceptance of life as it unfolds, but in contrast, the negative polarity seeks to control the present as it manifests. Not accept it, control everything, rule, manipulate, dominate at all costs. Please note the passage I'm about to read, it can be triggering or can be pretty explicit. So there's a trigger warning. It's going to be about a minute or two. It's going to take me to read it. This comes from Britannica Bibliography. Genghis Khan's personality was a complex one. He had great physical strength, tenacity of purpose, and an unbreakable will. At first, he could not see beyond the immediate gains to be got from massacre and raping, and at times was consumed by a passion for revenge. Yet all his life he could attract the loyalties of men willing to serve him, both fellow nomads and civilized men from the settled world. Organization, discipline, mobility, and ruthlessness of purpose were the fundamental factors in his military successes. Massacres of defeated populations with the resultant terror were weapons he regularly used. His practice of summoning cities to surrender and of organizing the methodical slaughter of those who did not submit has been described as psychological warfare. But although it was undoubtedly policy to sap resistance by fostering terror, massacre was used for its own sake. Unfortunately, there are still people today who have Khan's negative consciousness. The tactics are way different, like I was saying, with a high-tech the AI now too. Oh, now with the AI advancing as fast as it is, the service to self strategies are going to take on a form that might lead to the end of civilization. Who knows? It did happen in the movie Terminator 2. Number one, the service of being. Your primary service on this path is living authentically, learning, growing, and radiating love, really. Look at the picture on the left. Look at, she is making a heart symbol with her hands, and she's got a beautiful smile. Look at her energy. Look at her vibration. Look at her body language. That's the service of being. That took me a long time. In America and in most of the West, in our culture, we grew up where there was not much importance on the service of being. In fact, there might have even been like a negative focus on it, where if you're just being, then it's a waste of time, or all that kind of stuff doesn't matter. It's all about producing, the service of doing, do, produce, productivity. And even back in the day, it was just for men for the work productivity, but for women it was the all the rest of the productivity, the children taking care of and raising the households, the relationships in the community. So it was lots of, you have to be very productive, not so much focus on the service of being. Service of doing is self-explanatory, but figuring that out can be very subtle and long-term and difficult and soul-searching types of work just to figure out, what you're to be doing. But the service of doing is way less important than really just the service of being, your vibration. It's all about your positive energy, your vibration, your beingness, because that has such a positive effect on the planet, the planetary vibration, and on the collective consciousness too. Enough people, if enough people just focused on number one here, living authentically, learning, growing, focusing on love and kindness and honesty, just focusing on that. Doesn't matter what you do for a living or any of that kind of stuff, just your presence, your beingness, your energy, your attitude. That's the most important thing, love, happiness, kindness. Now, zooming in on each of these, we'll give overviews of these, then I'll cover how to practice them. 3 steps to practice each of these services. Here's the service of being, sometimes called the ministry of being, which is a term I really like. I really like that. The ministry of being, which is the art of living fully and giving freely with an open heart, expecting nothing in return, but also being aware of your own needs and radiating your high vibrational frequency outwards. When I was growing up, I used to love cartoons, one of which was the Care Bears. I loved the gummy bears, the Care Bears, the Smurfs, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, and some other ones too, but I think those are probably my favorite ones. And in the Care Bears, they did this thing called the Care Bear stare. And let's say somebody was really mean or really evil or really sad. The Care Bears could all get together, and they had to be together, I think. And then they would get all on a line together. I'm not sure if they held hands or if they were, had their arms around each other, but they would straight up beam. They would do this Care Bear stare, and then all of a sudden, all these rainbow lights and energy and vibrations and sound frequency and energy would beam out from them, hit the evil person, the mean person, or the sad person, etc., and they'd become loving. And that was, they were beaming love and light. And so that's kind of how I think of the service of being, just doing the Care Bear stare as you live. Paul says, that's funny, Matt. I watched all those cartoons. Yeah, those were some good ones. I miss 1980s and early 1990s Saturday morning cartoons. And I used to watch when I would get home from junior high and high school, and sometimes I would stay home. I used to love to watch the game shows like The Price is Right. What was that other one I really liked? It was something with like a whammy or something. Go Whammy. I forget what that one was called, but it was really suspenseful. You are the service. The service of being is rendered by radiating love, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, and religions and spirituality or spiritual philosophies have promoted the notion that we take up a ministry of being for thousands or maybe tens of thousands of years. You can raise your vibration so high that you radiate powerful energy that helps to shift the collective consciousness and raise all of that. So hopefully we don't blow each other up, nuclear holocaust, some type of thing, but instead there's a global awakening where we stop going to war with each other and we start figuring out smarter solutions where everybody can prosper. So there's kind of two timelines. It looks like we could either go back to the Stone Age by blowing everything up and making everything malfunction, or we could have that global awakening, or we could also have something in the middle of those, that dichotomy too. So that's the service of being. Service of doing requires, as I said, some soul searching. And for some people, it can take a lot of soul searching and social placement too. Each individual has unique talents, abilities, desires, and other characteristics. And finding a good fit for the service of doing can be subtle work that takes into account these unique talents, etc. For example, someone might be naturally artistic and invest her life painting in a medium-sized Los Angeles studio. Another person might find their purpose and fulfillment cooking at a five-star restaurant in London. Another person might find that their best service of doing is being a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. Since the actual act of service rests upon your attitude, this is the good news for you. This is good news for all of us. You can do anything you want for a living, for the service of doing, and still provide massive levels of service to others. That also positively polarizes your consciousness, helps you connect to cosmic power, universal truth. This can actually help you on an epigenetic level to downregulate genes that support anxiety and maybe depression, and upregulate genes that support a really good mood, really good confidence. You can start to develop superpowers the more you polarize. Here's how you practice the service of being, or here's how you can practice. One, radiate. Seek to embody and radiate love, compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, non-judgment, non-attachment, and wisdom. Care Bear Stare is the easy way to remember that one. Two, tune. Start each morning with a daily balancing tuning exercise consisting of gratitude and then forgiveness and acceptance of your own self and the forgiveness and acceptance of all others. It's a great way to start off your day tuning your energy circuit system, and that can help you to be in a better mood and have way more mental clarity and focus and higher vibe and consciousness. Papaya is totally resonating with this part all day long. And then three, ascend. Elevate spiritual intelligence and optimize the service of being by ascending in consciousness, traversing and elevating and going up that stairway to enlightenment by ascending the consciousness hierarchy. Develop and maintain a lifestyle of high vibe thoughts, words, and behaviors. High vibrational thoughts, high vibrational words, self-talk, communication with others, high vibrational journaling, high vibrational emails that you write, high vibrational words that you speak with others, high vibrational foods and beverages that you consume, and then high vibe behaviors. High vibe is another word for high energy. The vibration of organic kale, for example, is a lot higher of a vibration than 3-month-old white Wonder Bread. The vibration of Gregorian chant music from the 1500s or whenever that was is a lot higher vibration than NWA rap music from the 1980s. I'm not going to say that what that acronym band is, but yeah, so that's vibration. Okay, here's how to practice the service of doing. One is honor free will. seek to respect and do not infringe upon free will. Free will is a primary law and operating system of the universe. The negative polarity does not respect free will, and it laughs at free will, and it spits on free will, and it gets around and infringes on and blows up your free will if it can. So don't let it. 2, await the call to service. Wait until someone asks for help. With your wisdom, knowledge, and skills, you may see many opportunities to serve others. Do not infringe and wait for their call for service. When I was first learning personal development and early alcohol and drug recovery, about a month after I detoxed off of alcohol and drugs, I got into personal development and started to learn a lot from Tony Robbins and neuro-linguistic programming. At one point, for many, many, many months, I was reading no BS about a book a week. And a lot of the time I was reading 2 to 4 books at a time, but I would read, one for an hour and then another one for an hour or two, just depending on, how interesting it was or what I wanted to learn about. But I was like obsessing because my brain was so starving for growth at that point. So with all that newfound knowledge and strategies, and then I was seeing friends and family and peers and other people, like clients that I was working with at the time as a counselor, a substance abuse counselor. It was difficult for me to not infringe on people's free will sometimes because they wouldn't be wanting to know about all this stuff. And I would just be, hey, you got to check this out and you got to know about this. And then I would start to notice that, okay, this person's really not into it. And then I wouldn't really like continue to go on usually after that. But it was just because I really wanted to help and I thought that I could help, but people want help first. You want people to want your help. And so this can be, especially some of the things you're going to learn throughout these 6 weeks. You're going to be learning a lot of really fantastic stuff that could potentially help your loved ones or help a client you're working with or help a coworker. So this can be subtle work of kind of setting the feelers out first to see if somebody needs, do they even want your service to be rendered? And then number 3, use the success formula. The formula for this type of service is to find the intersection between a few things. There's going to be, imagine a pie, and in this pie chart, there is your natural talents and abilities, or, your pre-programmed soul gifts, maybe, and then your desires, your innate desires, and your abilities and talents, and then also a population of people that could use your talents, abilities, and skills and desires. Now, there's going to be an intersection. This is what I was interested in. This is what I desired. And there was certainly a population and a niche for it, and one that I could also make a living in. So that's the success formula right there. Papaya is resonating big time. Yep, that's the formula. Here's a quote from one of my mentors, Scott Mandelker, a PhD. He's an expert in things like transpersonal psychology and religion and spirituality. He has done decades and decades. He's in his 60s, and when he got into all these topics I just mentioned when he was in middle school. Yeah, so he is quite the source of knowledge. Here's what he says about the service of doing. Once you've found your niche and a line of expression compatible with your own skills and desires, the work becomes more subtle. Then it's a matter of poise and skillful means, called upaya in the Buddhist tradition, serving fully and freely, wisely and well, all the while keeping balance in body, mind, spirit. Questions at this point are more fine-tuned. What to give, how much to give, when to wait, how much you need, and how to embody universal consciousness in each particular situation. These are more subtle issues that demand self-reflection and an ample dose of honesty with oneself. Here's where meditation and some kind of group support are most helpful, since they provide the inner depth and outer structure within which our individual purpose can be developed in society. I love that. I love that quote. The positive path in a nutshell is twofold. Here's just another way to look at it from before. You could look at the service of being, one, as live and let your light shine, radiate light, acting as an encouraging beacon for all those lost in the dark. What does a lighthouse do? A lighthouse is a source of light and direction for all those lost in the dark trying to find their way. You could also look at that as service of being as function of lighthouse or shepherd. Number two, service of doing, you could frame that as serve and tap into your talents. Harness soul gifts, which you came pre-programmed with. These service of doing, serving, and tapping into your talents, again, much, much less important than being loving, kind, and honest. Here are 10 of my favorite service to others quotes on the service of doing or on serving and using your talents. 1, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. MLK Jr. 2, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi. 3, all other pleasures and possessions pale into nothingness before service which is rendered in a spirit of joy. Another Mahatma Gandhi quote. 4, the more we give away, the more is given to us. Wayne Dyer, PhD. 5, love in action is service to the world. All right, Lynn Namka. So that's the one quote on here about the service of being. Love in action is service to the world. It is. It's service to the planet and the people. 6, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Yeah, Muhammad Ali, you preach it. 7, those who are happiest are those who do the most for others. Booker T. Washington. 8, whoever renders service to many puts himself in line for greatness. Great wealth, great return, great satisfaction, great reputation, great joy. Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn's one of my favorite mentors of all time. Here's some other good quotes from him. For things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. Number 9, as far as service goes, it can take the form of a million things. To do service, you don't have to be a doctor working in the slums for free or become a social worker. Your position in life and what you do doesn't matter as much as how you do what you do. Okay, there's another quote about the service of being. How you do what you do. Your beingness, as that's the being of doing. The doing of being. 10, everyone has a purpose in life and a unique talent to give to others. And when we blend this unique talent with service to others, we experience the ecstasy and exaltation of our spirit, which is the ultimate goal of all goals. Kalam Anji Reddy. And finally, a final quote from Scott Mandelker. Just realize that what is offered in service is simply just you, which is why the very personal work of balancing mind, body, spirit, and opening to total self-acceptance is so central to the path of service.